Hi, Liam O'Gogan here from the Does It Matter Research Project. And welcome to part two of this episode, which is reviewing a recording of a conversation with Tony Downs from the CSO on the 22nd of April 2016, when he rang me at 11:58. So we'll just continue with the conversation with Tony.
Okay, that's fine. Now, so moving on, sorry, you're now telling me you're going to interview the interviewers. Is that correct on the day?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Now, and you will enter this conversation in the knowledge or belief that there is no copy available of this backup contemporaneous note.
Yes, that is certainly the information.
Now, the other thing is, I presume you've had the opportunity, like I've had, to review the marks as granted to everybody, because presumably you're not just going to ask them about my interview. Presumably you are also going to ask them about my interview in the context of the other interviews. Is that reasonable, or are you just going to ask them about my interview?
Well, I suppose everybody is scored based on how the interviewers considered they answered what would have been a standard set of questions. So, I mean, you already have the various marks that were available and that were granted to everybody who came for interview. But I'd say my specific remit is to focus on the process as a whole, and then your particular interview as part of that.
But the process as a whole is what I mentioned, because in relation to that, therefore, I presume you've therefore reviewed the markings as a whole already. You've had lots of time to look at this documentation, so presume you've reviewed the marks as a whole. Is that correct?
Well, I have available to me all of the marks of everybody who intended to interview. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And you've had presumably no, but I'm asking, have you looked at them? I mean, have you evaluated them as a set of marks? Because you're examining the process as a whole, or the interview process as a whole.
Well, as I said, marks they're not. My remit is solely your particular case, your particular interview. So it doesn't go beyond that.
Okay, can I just challenge the fundamental vacuity of that statement? How can you evaluate my marks without contextualizing them against everybody else's marks, given that this is a competition? This is not like putting a video on one runner in a 100-meter race without having a broader view of what position they came in the race and what happened in the race. Again, is this madness on my part to suggest that you need to look at the broader context?
Well, as I say, that's something I will be discussing and clarifying with the interviewers. But
sorry, this has nothing to do with the interviewers. This is about what your professional tool evaluating something. If you're only going to evaluate my marks and how they came about, without also critiquing the other marks and how they came about, how can you measure fairness?
Well, as I say,
sorry, that's a question. Did you not understand the question?
No, everybody is asked a standard set of questions, and then it's how they respond to those that their marks are decided and allocated. So the fairness is that there's everybody's asked the same questions essentially.
The fairness is that everybody's asked the same question. I mean, I want to tell you, we're probably 49 minutes into the conversation I'm having with this chap, and I started off without any underpinning belief that I was going to get any sort of level of professional independence and fairness or competence in relation to this. You know, I emailed him a couple of times. He never bothered sending back to me any advance information that I could find out who he was or what his process as such was, and I'm slowly unravelling the nature of this haphazard process that he's talking about. This guy, you see these marks in front of me here. You know, I entered a competition with all these other people. These are my marks down: 85, 90, 60, 50, max 285, against 145, 145, 120. All these marks up here, just for standard example. 85 marks, here's my marks. The standard of the first 10 people there, something like 130. And so there's a marked variability between my performance and these people's performance in this. And this guy's going to look at my marks solely and see he can determine fairness of an overall process. I mean, how on earth would anybody even continue a conversation with this guy? And this goes on for another period of time. But I mean, I am sorry, folks, but I couldn't buy in at any time to anybody pretending that there's some sort of professionalism involved here.
Hold on, sorry. I think you've just stated that the fairness is that everybody's asked the same question.
Yes,
Okay.
and given the opportunity to respond.
Okay. And I would suggest that perhaps there's another element in the fairness, is to how the answers to those questions are then evaluated and marked, not just individually, but in the context of each other's ones. So, for example, the top person who got this result got 480 marks out of 500. They dropped 5 points only in each of the sectors. That's a 96% success rate. Now, I think I have a reasonable civic expectation that this is a linear marking process. Would you confirm that?
Well, the marking process is, as I say, determined by the questions asked and how the.
Now, I asked him, was it a linear marking process? Now, I submit that if he didn't understand the question, what's his linear marking process, he could have easily just asked me, would you mind saying that is? But he's just bluffing here. He's just making up. You know, I find it difficult, having been evaluated as someone with limited communication skills or whatever, to believe that these highly positioned senior people, like Tony Downs, by the way, at never any stage didn't identify what his role or status in the organisation is, but I can hardly believe is of a lower level than a higher executive officer. It just doesn't seem to make sense. And this is communication at its sharpest from a supposedly independent evaluator.
Questions were answered, and whether the interviewer's assessment of whether their questions as answered meets the requirements of the post.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the question once more. Is the assessment process a linear marking process? Now, do you understand the question?
Well,
yes or no?
Well, it's a standard marking process based on replies to a standard set of questions.
So you'd wonder why he couldn't answer yes or no. Did he not hear me saying yes or no? Did he think that I was putting him in some sort of a box by asking yes or no? Or was he just not listening? Is he on transmission mode all the time? Has he just got a whole load of sub-programmed algorithms that he just feeds out without ever actually listening?
Okay.
Is that what you're asking, or is it
okay, well, okay. If you buy one apple for €2 and you buy two apples for €4 and 3 apples for €6, that's called a linear process. Okay? If you buy 2 apples for €2 and 3 apples for €5, that's a non-linear process. Okay.
Now, sorry, when I listen to this, that sounds almost like patronising what I'm doing here, but I really asked the viewer to go back, and Tony, if you're listening to this, and I hope you are, to go back and listen to this. This is dreadful. I mean, I think in all my time lecturing in the third level, I seldom would have ever had to try and recommunicate a question to a student, undergraduates, no matter how poor they were or whatever, to the level that I'm having to do it with these senior civil servants. I really, like, it's almost cringing for me. I'm listening to this sort of millisecond by millisecond, watching the waveforms as I'm recording this, and I'm suffering having to listen to this stuff again. No, I've done this deliberately in the Does It Matter research program to forensically go through a complete data set and make it available for the public, that if anybody's remotely interested in quality standards in public service and then also evaluating these, what I call systemic fractals, how do people get like this? How do you get to the top of the civil service and act in such an unsatisfactory, I might be very careful with what words I'd release out of me at this level of frustration.
Okay. No. If somebody gets 480 marks and somebody else gets 240 marks, the linear process will say that the person who got 480 marks performed twice as well as the person who got 240 marks. So, in the light of that explanation, I'm asking you, can you confirm that your process is a linear marking process? Is that any clearer?
Well, I'm afraid
not.
Is
the question any clearer?
Well, the the process and how it's run is, as I set out in the by the Commission for Public Service Appointments.
So there you are, kicking for touch. The process is set out by the Commission of Public Service Appointments. I've asked them a question. So I'm saying, I don't know, Tony, whether you just simply, I'm not answering this guy, I'm not listening to anything he's saying, or whether you genuinely hadn't a clue what I was saying, or whether you were just confused. I really don't know, Tony. But you're not answering the questions I've asked. There is a relevance. If I just jump down to these pictures here, like if you look at the marks that I'm achieving here, I'm achieving 85, while the percentile mark of the achievers is 130. On questions which, just to jump up here to, let's see if I can find the questions involving things like understand scope and scale of job, works in own initiative, inspires confidence, good communicator, map reading ability. Take these ones, aptitudes, which are nothing to do with my personality. Aptitudes, ability with simple figures, ability to complete forms, etc. This is what we're interrogating here. These are not exam questions that I could actually sit down and mark and could be evaluated. They're completely open loop questions with no actual tests involved. So I'm trying to find out if there's a fairness in the process, then the fairness must map across the results. That's why I'm asking these questions. You know, is 145 proportionately better than 85, as in the proportion of numbers? You know, for example, is 145 over 185 is something like 50% better than 85. Is that true or false? And he just simply won't address these questions.
And that is.
Sorry, Tony, hold on. Did you not understand the question I asked you? Sorry, did I fail to make it clear?
Well, as I'm trying to say, the
no, sorry, hold on, Tony. I asked you a question. If you don't understand my question, how am I expecting you to give me an answer? To be fair to you, it's not fair to me to ask you to give me an answer to a question you don't understand. So, if at least we get to put a bit of effort into getting the question clear. Are you clear on the question I've asked you? If somebody gets 480 marks and someone else gets 240 marks, in a linear system, that means the person at 480 marks performed twice as well as the person at 240 marks. Would you agree with that analysis?
Yes, as I say,
that's all I wanted, Tony. Okay.
Yes,
now,
sure.
Therefore, I'm wondering, when you looked at this, did any sort of analysis. I mean, you people are in the business of data analysis. I'm just a retired lecturer. I mean, what would I know about these things? I just put these stuff into a spreadsheet and I do an analysis. And it seems to me that on section number 1, mark number 1, I perform somewhat 40% less than the average percentile of the 10 people, the first 10 people in the competition. 40% less. So I'm saying, wow, not only have I failed, but I'm 40% off the average pace of the people who applied in West Donegal for a job as an enumerator. So I'm saying, if anybody was looking at any statistical analysis, that's outside the bounds of normality. That's all I'm asking. I've asked everybody in the CSO, and we can't see that. Sorry, can you see, when you look at my marks in relation, can you see any aberration from norms here?
Well,
if you never met anybody, if you didn't know anybody, just asked to look at those marks, can you notice any aberration from them? I'm saying this is the CSO, this is data evaluation. This is what you do.
No, I say, look, there's a standard set of questions asked to try and probe an interviewee's understanding of the requirements of the job and their suitability for the job, and then the way how they answer those questions determines the marks awarded. So in any interview process, you're going to have a range of marks. So I think that's
of course. To be expected, you know? Of course, and obviously in terms of standards and marks and standards, what you try and do is you presumably try and filter out any of the irrationalities in such a process in order to ensure fairness. So I've just tried to bring to your attention that anybody who works with figures and who analyzes data, that's what you people do, who pretends not to notice an aberration from the norm, would have to say, No, let me just give an example. The last section here is called Education and Experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I scored 60% on this. Now, you have a CV belonging to me, and I keep thinking, I think it's fairly reasonable to say that maybe people performed at a much higher level. So, for example, I would suggest that For someone to comply and that to make sense, and for all the other marks to make sense, something jumps out at me in relation to it. But let me go to the first one. The first question, and it's divided in 6, and I do accept, I've been told by Kieran Hart that you don't just divide 150 by 6 and give 25 to each section. I think the word that was used by somebody in your organisation was, well, things are taken in the round. On a human basis, I accept that to some degree. We make rounded decisions, but we then granularise our results so we can back them up. So the first question says you understand scope and scale of the job. So I was interested in that because the response to that was limited understanding of the rules of census and numerator. And let's say somebody applies 25 marks to that, and remember I got 85 out of 150 for that. So I'm just poking just that little one. Specifically on today, when I was asked, I said, of course, what was my understanding of the job, my conversation with previous census enumerators, and my interest in that dialogue, because I would have had a personal, particular interest, having lived the life as an equally sharing parent in a separated situation, that the questions asked in the CSO census from the past number of years specifically failed to pick up on the life experience of parents who share children or shared on an equally shared basis, and therefore all public policy which was deriving from this was completely uninformed because of the failure of the granularity of the questions to be meaningful at all. So, for example, if the children in my case were residing with me on that particular night, it looked like there was a person without children living somewhere else. All of this. So I would have had an interest. I would have had these detailed discussions with census enumerators. Very quickly, when that question was asked, it was specifically pointed out to me, don't worry about this, because there's a full and comprehensive training program provided for census enumerators. And I have since then listened to the Chief Statistician, Deirdre Cullen, repeatedly talk about this training process, etc., being provided. She talked this in public interviews. So I'm saying to myself, so what sort of a question is that in the first place if they're telling you, sure, there's a whole series of training to be given. So the prerequisite for you to have an experience, to me, there's no rationale in that marking except to know whether you can read and write. Right? So just to clarify, it works on own initiative. So just looking at that, well, look, if I was a lecturer for some 25, 27 years or something like that, what do you think you do with a class of people on their own? My previous experience in project management, what do you think you're supposed to be doing? Inspires confidence. Like, you're a good communicator. Now, again, displayed average communication skills. I want to say to you that I actually thought that, not that I thought, my evidence of that experience was that it was a very, very convivial experience, very communicative, etc. I'm beyond being shocked at what was said here, just beyond. Not personally hurt is too simplistic. It's not about being personally hurt. This simply doesn't map with my experience of reality. Would get cooperation, would exercise good judgment. Now, the other thing is all of the other aptitudes. Let me give you some map reading ability. I was told, look, you need to be able to read maps to find houses. I discussed in detail with these people that I have been driving motorhomes from the north of Bergen in Norway down to the south of Italy and across into Eastern Europe, through the largest cities and the smallest swamps and lakes, and live off both all sorts of map reading facilities. Maps are what I'm into, and I got 90 out of 150. So I keep thinking, and I've half of these people were women, presumably in a gender balanced situation they are, and if the world says the women can't read maps, and I ended up with 90, there's something really missing here. The other thing is, it demonstrates reasoning ability. I just want to say to you that in all my dealings with the CSO, that the last thing I've met is a willingness to have any reasoning ability. And the other thing is, at no stage was I set a test that I could pass or fail with these questions. These were all self-referral questions. Do you accept that? Every one of these questions is a self-referral. Like if I had said, I am a genius, there's no one in the room can say, prove it. Nobody did ask me to prove it. So how does anybody supposed to make an interpretation? So that's a very specific question about your processes. There were no sets of tests. There was no trick questions, no anything asked in your process. So what sort of professionalism is placed into your assessment situation? Like I assess students in the third level on questions that I ask them. I had to provide marking schemes prior to marking the results. And my marking systems were mapped against my material. And my marking schemes and my presentation papers were repeatedly come back by external examiners as being of excellence. Now I'm saying to you, you people have carried out a process here. You've given me no questions that I could answer in a way which could be tested by anybody, nor I presume unless I was treated differently than anybody else. How could anybody mark these things? I mean, can you have any sense of appreciation of where my thought process are coming from?
Well, as I say, the way that this process is run is that everybody's asked a standard set of questions, and then how they respond to those questions.
Okay, so when you ask someone what's your map reading ability, no, hold on, just pick on one, just because that's something that's very straightforward. A map is a map is a map. Okay, the question is, what's your map reading ability? Okay, so I keep saying, what's a 96% answer? Because somebody got 96%. In fact, a number of people up at the top line got very high marks. So what would they have said about that? They wrote the maps. They're beyond maps. Come on, I mean, and what would a real bum do? What would a failure do? What would somebody get 60% in that factor, just a pass mark? What would they have had to have said? So I'm wondering, are you hearing any of this, Tony?
No, I'm listening to everything you're saying, and as I say, part of what I'm trying to do here is exactly that, is to get and say what you've had about the process, how you've had the process was for you, and then from discussing it with the interviewers.
It's interesting when I listen to that. How is it for you, Tony? It's a bit like going to a shrink. How is it for you, Liam? What I was trying to ask him is, I mean, what are the sample answers? How do you mark these answers? Like, do they just go? Why don't you just go and look at the Leaving Cert marking scheme? Like, what is a marking scheme here? Is there such a thing as a marking scheme?
To make an assessment on whether the process was in line with what it should have been, and from that whether the marks and so on were reasonable for your interview.
Again, none of this, the makey uppy as you go along stuff, really does not inspire any sense of confidence in me. And particularly, at this stage in our into it, I'm wondering, is this guy going to be competent or capable to carry out any sort of professional review of this at all?
Okay, and in relation, I would say there are three scenarios here. There's my perception, the interviewer's perception, and the man on the Clapham omnibus. So the man on the Clapham omnibus presumably is your standard, is that correct?
Sorry?
The man on the Clapham omnibus is your standard, I presume, is he?
I'm not quite sure what
okay, look him up. Look him up. I mean, you're supposed to be an investigator reviewing something. Look up the man in the Clapham omnibus if you want to know what reasonableness is in standards of evaluation. Look him up. The man in the Clapham omnibus, CLAPHAM. My expectation is you would be cognizant of this type of material.
No, I know I'm quite annoyed there, but it's really important. I mean, if there's a guy who's going to do an evaluation, so he's going to be the reasonable mediator in the middle of this, and he has no idea of this idea of the man that Clapham omnibus, or the idea of reasonableness. Now, all I'm saying is, I believe if you have any level of professional engagement with any sort of review process, and you're involved in this is part of your skill set. Presume you've had some training in this. This would not be a new concept to you.
I do not feel in any way that I should have to bring you to awareness of that. In other words, there's my view, my perspective. There's the view of the other party, and there's the view of the detached, independent person, the man on the Clapham omnibus. Now,
right.
In the area of ability with simple figures, that's a question. This question, presumably, is one of the aptitudes that was be determined. My ability with simple figures. And all I'm left with is that I was given 60% across the range. So I have been given no other granularity, and you people have managed to disappear any supportive evidence which would support any of this. All right? So I'm just asking myself, how would you people have determined ability with simple figures? So let me ask you a question. What's 5.5 by 5.5, Tony? Or 6.5 by 6.5? Or 7.5 by 7.5? Can you answer me that question off the top of your head? That's a simple figure, isn't it? What's 5.5 by 5.5?
Sure, yeah.
No, I asked you a question. What's 5.5 by 5.5?
I'd have to think about that for a second.
Okay, what's 5 5s?
25.
Okay, so that would be a simple question. The other one would be a bit more question, but the other one's 26 and a quarter. So 5.5, 6.5 by 6.5, 6/7 is 42.25.
So again, just for completeness, folks, I was quite wrong. 5.5 by 5.5 is 30.25. So I need to be sure. So just we can admit that I get lots of things wrong as well. Tony didn't even make a stab at it. What I'm really trying to point out here is, the complete vacuity of this questioning system. You're asked questions, but nobody ever asked me to do a sum, by the way, anything. Nobody asked me a calculation, not even a simple calculation, at this interview. So how did they determine whether somebody like me got 60% on this, and the average above me was certainly about 130?
So I'm just saying to you, I am just demonstrating to you that I think that I passed the test. I was an engineering lecturer in the third level. I had a control and automation company which relied on my computational capacity and my ability in a Cartesian engineering sense to manage data. Somebody has come in here and made this evaluation, and I'm asking for a supportive process to back up this damage to my reputation that's been put in there. So, I mean, for you to turn around and say, well, it's what you think is what the other people think, I'm expecting something. I'm expecting someone from an independent professional process. I'm expecting somebody to identify reasonableness, to identify the process that was put in place, which claims to be a professional process. So nobody asked me any questions. I gave you a chance. I asked you a question. I gave you some. You were able to do one very rapidly. The other one you said you'd have to think about. I was given nothing here. Do you understand? Demonstrate reasoning ability. I just wonder, right. I really, maybe I didn't turn up at the interview. Maybe somebody else turned up. Maybe I was on a suppressant, antidepressant, codepressant, multidepressant. I don't do those things, right? And I wasn't having a bad day. I wasn't having a blackout or a blind spot. Now, the other thing I just want you to realize that all this has taught me is, and the bigger question, I've done this, by the way, I'll try to explain to you people, €2,600 is not what this is about. Nor is it got to do with I'm in some way individually peaked that somebody reckons that I'm below par. That's not what this is about. This is about a much bigger research project that I've been following up since 2012 called Does It Matter? Few people have just arrived with, to me, a beautiful case study in the complete mismanagement of thought processing within the public service. That's what I've experienced. And that's all I'm trying to interrogate. Nothing more, in that sense, nothing more, nothing less. So please do not ever reduce this into a thing that this guy's just pissed off because he didn't get something. This, in my view, does not stack up as making sense. More importantly, nothing that I've heard so far from any of you people suggests that any of you people are applying any intellectual or critical thinking faculties into finding out whether it makes sense. Every time I ask you a question of some sort of, well, it says this in the record or not, I'm asking you, for example, how would you determine whether someone would follow instructions? How would you ask the question, would you follow instructions? How would you get an answer to that? Just please, excuse me, Joe, would you follow instructions?
Sure,
what's Joe likely to say?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hold on. If he wants to pass, he's unlikely to say, oh no. Or I would only follow the instructions if I liked them.
Sure, yeah.
No, but I'm saying, firstly, in a self-referral question, it seems to me everybody here has to get 100%. Now, I got less than 60 and somebody else got 96. So I want to know how person A, B, or C got 90. What did they have to say? Did they have to do pirouettes? Did they have to walk around, go on their knees 3 times? Did I fail to do some sort of circus act? Because I wasn't asked to do a circus act. Do you understand?
Sure, yeah.
I'm able to play. Look, I've played lots of games with lots of rules. And, I'm really good, having been a good Christian Brother student. You know what I mean? When the rule is drawn over me, I'm really excellent at performing. I am really excellent at performing. But I'm saying, you're talking about your process. You're going to evaluate the process. So I'm saying it's not unreasonable for me to say, what would a quality way of putting that question be and a quality way of answering it be? So I've given you 5 seconds. Map reading ability. I've told you what I discussed with them as my skill sets. I've given you not a really difficult question, which you weren't able to answer off the top of your head. 3, ability to complete forms. I don't know, how could I have survived in the third level without being able to do that? 3, demonstrates reasoning ability. Well, obviously, whatever thought process I have or completely, or sort of sub all of that, and then, sorry, I don't agree with that, by the way. And then the last one would follow instructions. So, I mean, I'd want to be a real idiot to fail that one. If there was nobody challenging me, if somebody had said to me, oh, look at Jesus, I mean, we know you never do what you're told. I mean, again, would I have lasted in the system? I was in the system, Tony. You know, I was paid. I worked for demand for all that period of time. I worked in the railway before that. Now, of course, if you ask me, would I follow instructions that were neither professional nor had integrity, the answer would be absolutely not. I was not one of the guards in Auschwitz. I wouldn't have complied. Sorry, don't fit the bill. But I was not being asked, would you follow incorrect instructions? I was being asked, would you follow instructions? So I have always worked in project management teams. I worked for people. People worked for me. I survived. I was never sacked. I was never cautioned. I was never censored. So, but I was never asked to provide it. I mean, I had put Professor Tom Collins down as one of my referees in the system. I hate to think that Professor Tom Collins would be looking at me and saying, Jesus, that fella, is that as much a clown as he's turned out to be when we really investigated him in this process?
Sure, yes, yeah. And so
I mean, are we getting any sense here, Tony, that I'm wondering, you see, I keep asking me that, is there any possibility that there could be a fair outcome of this review? Is there any potential that there could be truth emerges from this interview or this process of yours? I'm asking you, can you understand that I'm 60 years of age and looking at the life experience I've had, do I really think that someone's going to tell the truth in this case?
Right, well, that is absolutely, that is the aim of the process.
But hold on, the aim is supported by the loss of a piece of relevant data, the failure to make any effort to seek to find out whether there's a backup in that data, the investigation in the administrative section, which is no written record of it. Like, none of this is supported by any professional behaviour which would lead a querist like me to believe that anybody's serious about this. I mean, this would have all disappeared unless the only person who's keeping this door open is me. Would you agree with that?
No, I mean, absolutely, you're entitled to a review. And
I didn't ask you that. I said, hold on, this again further up. What do you not understand about this? The only person who's keeping this door open is me. How many reviews have you participated in about this particular census?
We've had a few requests.
Okay. No, see, that was my mistake. That was poor communication of me. How many reviews have you personally, individually, you yourself, conducted about this enumerator process?
Yours is one of a couple I'm working on at the moment, actually.
Oh, so there's more than one?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Now, how many of those would, in those cases, would have involved the giving out to those people of the marking system at the iteration that I was giving them out? In other words, given the same marks, or are people being treated better or worse than me?
No, I mean, people are entitled to request the scores they got, and we release as much as we possibly can.
But I mean,
this is important. We release as much as we can. Again, if you take the trouble, folks, to listen both to my conversations with Marcelo Joyce and which predate this conversation and one with Val McRae, this is not true. What they've said is essentially they basically give people as much as people squeeze out of them. There isn't a standard, that's all I ever asked for. What is the set point? Can we all argue about the set point? Be very, very robust about our argument, and then set it down. Then everybody gets it. Doesn't matter who you are. You just apply and you just get it, which is what I really actually thought I was supposed to be. My expectation was that in a fair system, that's what I would have got at the start. So I mean, that's not what this guy is saying.
We release as much as we possibly can.
But I mean, so people are released this material of the marks, the second iteration, that's the marks with everybody else's marks with their names redacted, is that right?
Well, they're entitled to ask for that. It varies, but...
But are they entitled to be given them if they're entitled to ask for them?
Well, they're as happened in your case, you get a breakdown of all the.
Now you see this now. I ask him a question. These questions are clear. They are unambiguous. They're quite simple. And this is prevarication at its highest. This is one of the systemic granules. How do you get to have that pattern of behaviour? I don't believe you'd learn this. Certainly I never learned it in school. I never learned it in college. How do you get to be like this? And people who are highly educated get to be as opaque as this. I mean, is there a school of yes ministry that you go to just provide? Listen again to just what he's saying here. Look at.
Well, they're as happened in your case. You get a breakdown of all the marks without any personally identified information there.
Everybody else does as well. I'm just wondering, am I being treated the same as everybody else? That's all.
Oh, no,
or are they being
absolutely.
treated the same as me?
No, certainly, and say that's what the process is for, to make sure that everybody.
Okay, so everybody else is given this information.
If they so wish, say yes.
So I just want to stop that. Just he asked a question. He's not directly lying, if you might put it like that. But if they so wish. If you go back to the very first question that I asked, and I'll just go back to it down here in the bottom, if I can pull it up. It was back, and I'll just pause for a minute and see if I can drag it up. So once again, on the 24th of February this year, 2016, I was 60 years of age that day. The question I asked, Dear Sir or Madam, with reference to the email below, that was the one saying I didn't get the job, please email me by return all links and references as to my right to appeal this decision and my right to information, read my evaluation scoring matrix, etc. So, I mean, that's asking for all the information. And what I got was hen's teeth, picked one after the other, forced out of these people. So again, when this guy says the following,
if they so wish, say yes.
So it's.
I mean, this is, I heard my two barristers in court many years ago describe each other. My friend here is being disingenuous. This is the first time I came across that word, and I suppose the onomatopoeic effect of it with two theatrical. Actually, they were women, I think, but they were theatrically dressed in their black garb and wigs and all the rest. And but I really got disingenuous. I didn't have to be explained to me what was going on. So I have to say, Tony, I suggest that I don't know whether you switch off your brain when you go to work in the morning or whether you are like this in your personal life. But I find this reprehensible. That's the very minimum I can say, reprehensible. Now I know this is like torture listening to this stuff again. It really is. And if you, the viewer, are wondering about this, my objective in the long term is I think this material really needs to be part of learning resource in a teaching and learning environment about management, about ethical behaviour and all the rest. And it's only when you go to this edge of, if I had hair, I'd be pulling it out, that you start saying, why are we doing this? Why is this best practice in the public service?
So it's only if they ask the question that they get. And the real issue and point, if you keep pushing the door open, you'll get a little bit more. Like Kieran Hart says, as your FOI officer, he says I should never have been given this information. No, I'm just saying, I've now been given information which your FOI person said I shouldn't have been given. So I don't know, are you people agreeing with each other, or disagreeing with me, or separately agreeing with me, or am I only be given a special because I happen to ask the question? But we don't have, we don't have marks and standards, any professional. We don't have any level of consistency in your operation. Never mind me. That's the first thing. Second thing is, out of this, one of my demands out of this is that I want a clear public exposition about what a person who participates in an interview in a public service position has a right to have ab initio without having to keep pushing the envelope. I think, and by the way, I suggest that's in the public interest, including someone like you. If you do an interview internally or otherwise, you have certain rights. I believe you should have no more rights than me or no less rights than me. So part of my objective is a public service interest in relation to that and establishing that. Now, you tell me there's a number of other process being evaluated at the moment. You said to me that people are given information if they so request them, which again, I believe is... I suggest that if you understand my question correctly, that your answer is at best, disingenuous. That's what I suggest. In other words, people should be entitled to information, not because they know which questions to ask. I asked for a question of a scoring matrix. I believe I should have been given every piece of data, except for information which would divulge their personal identity, as in their PPS number, their name, their surname, and address. Do you see any other marks, any other information on that sheet that would personally identify an individual?
No, but
No,
say,
no. So you said no. Because again, look, you have real difficulty, but the no but. There's a caveat in every answer you give me. I've asked you. I tried to make an unequivocal, non-ambiguous question. Is there any other data besides PPS, name, surname, and address, which could personally identify an individual?
Well, look,
Why can't you answer that, Tony? I mean, is it too hard a question at your grade? Am I unreasonable? At what level does insanity kick in before I say, this guy's just not willing to answer this question? And come on, give me something I can believe in terms of professionalism here. I've asked you, I think, a reasonable question. I think you could equally ask that question of somebody in a hospital situation where either you or a dependent of yours was a victim of something. I think you could ask that question with the same level of authenticity. I'm just asking you that question. Is anything in that spreadsheet that personally identifies a person other than their PPS, their name, their surname, and address?
Well, look, all I can say to you is that, under the guidelines and the codes of practice that this process operates under, we have given you as much as we believe that we can do.
No, you've given me more, according to what your guidelines, and now you're going back to guidelines. I don't know what your guidelines are. I presume Kieran Hart would be the holder of many of these guidelines as the FOI officer. I presume he would be the man, he'd be the sheriff in terms of what the guidelines are. Would that be reasonable?
He would be the FOI officer for the CSO.
So he would therefore represent the guidelines of what you should be given out.
Well,
he'd be the go-to guy to clarify what the guidelines mean in terms of what people are entitled to, is it?
That would be reasonable, I say. Yes, yeah.
Okay, so when he has already told me that you gave me something that was beyond the guidelines, what does that mean? Do you want it back? Should I pretend I didn't see this stuff? Do you think I shouldn't have got this stuff? Sorry, that's a good one. Do you think, you're a man doing review, do you think I should have been given these marks?
Well, as I said, that is outside...
No, do you, Tony, you're the reviewer. Do you think I should have been given these marks? Because if I shouldn't have been, I think your interviewers are being unfairly treated. This is unfair to those interviewers. If I've been given data I shouldn't have been given. So do you think I should have been given this data? That's a yes or no as well.
Well, with respect to it's outside my remit, which is what I've been trying to clarify with you.
But is it outside your remit if you're carrying out a review into my interview experience? If I've been given data to interrogate the system that I shouldn't have been doing, that's unfair. If that's true, that what I was given was wrong or incorrect, then it's unfair to the other people. And there's somebody on the other side of this, the interviewers. Obviously, it would appear that the system has been set up to create us into combative situations. I mean, they're going to have to defend their position, and I'm challenging their position. I'm now being given a set of tools to challenge their performance, which I shouldn't have been given. Do you not accept that that's unfair to them?
Well, that is outside of my role in this process. And that
How can it be outside your role? You're there to review the results of that interview. But if in me interrogating that and putting aside to you using tools that you people have given me I shouldn't have been given, then this is contra to the interests and the rightful interests of the interviewers. You must have a view on that.
Well, I'd say that was a call that was made before I was involved in the process.
Oh, I do. I'm not. Oh, of course, I'm not.
It's outside of my remit, so I just can't comment on that, unfortunately. Say my role in remit here is quite limited, and
well, I think it would be reasonable for you to put in mind of the interviewers when discussed them that Mr. O'Gogan has been given information which has allowed him to interrogate and penetrate the process over and above which the FOI officer felt he should have been given. This may put you in a disadvantageous situation, and your employers, have put you in a disadvantageous situation. I think it would be remiss of you not to make those people cognizant of their rights, because if I was them, I'd withdraw from the process. I'd take an action against you for possibly exposing them. You need to, and for you to run away from this and pretend it's nothing to do with it, I think, I question whether that's both professional and reasonable. Now, I'm not twisting your arm. You have to do what you do. My job is to make sure that I can say, I made this guy cognizant of this information. You people have given me information which your FOI guy says was beyond the pale. That's what you said. He shouldn't have been given this information. You don't seem to be able to answer the question when I asked you if there's any other information on that sheet which except the PPS name, surname, and address that would identify a person. Nobody's willing to engage in that dialogue. Everybody says, it's not my issue, it's not my issue, not my issue. Everybody doesn't want to deal with the issues, right? So I'm left with the situation of believing that you're going to go into a process and that you're going, it seems to me that you will just keep the blinds closed enough that you may avoid noticing anything which may be relevant. So I'm just trying to suggest that there are many things that should be relevant. The loss of this document, the fact that nobody seems to be interested in the presence or otherwise of this document. What's the implication in terms of real potential that you have evaluating anything? If you go into these people, would you accept that they can make up any old story at all now because there's no document to challenge their view of it? I'm not saying they will, by the way. I didn't say that. I'm saying they're being facilitated in doing so by the or the disappearance of this document. Is that
with respect, that is calling into question the integrity of CSO staff, and that's quite a serious matter.
Which staff, though? Sorry.
Wow, it's an hour and 20 minutes, and this guy's finally getting it. This is calling into question the integrity of CSO staff. I don't know what I've been doing since the 24th of February. But everything I'm disclosing here is calling into question the integrity of the CSO staff at every level. So, I mean, Tony, this he's in shock and horror that I'm doing this now. And actually, this really gives me a big insight into, again, that, what I call it, my head is going here, the systemic fractal of that behavior. It's a built-in code that tells himself there's nothing wrong with us. We are beyond question. And anybody who might question us is a bad person. Rather than just look at I came to this conclusion after looking at the facts of my experience, not for anything else. I'm just doing the math. That's all.
Which staff, though? Sorry, no, hold on. Sorry, which staff? I just want to be clear. If I'm going to make an allegation, and I am absolutely considering the allegation of misfeasance in public office. Absolutely, I'm considering that. But I'd be very careful about who I make that against. I think, look, it'd be absolutely incorrect for me to make an allegation against somebody who was completely innocent in this. So who are you suggesting if you're suggesting I'm making that? Who specifically?
You said that people are free to make stuff up. I don't...
Well, no, sorry, perhaps I should rephrase that. What is to prevent people making stuff up if the evidence which would hold them to account in some way is now suitably disappeared? That would suit that person who was being asked. There's no documentation that challenged their response.
Okay, we'll leave it there for part two. There's one more part of equivalent there, but it does throw up an interesting question that we're going to look at in the third part. Again, the question basically is, if there are no measurements or constraints around anybody, what's to prevent them from making things up, especially when their own necks are on the line? And, Tony says he's horrified that I might suggest this. Anyway, the part 3 is to follow, and just thanks for being with me so far from Liam O'Gogan at the Does It Matter research program.